And I think you've been, fairly open about that exit. We'll just say it was a big exit. You did well.
Yeah. So I throw the number around. Sometimes people accuse me of being arrogant and taking a victory lap. That's not the reason why I throw the number around. I throw it around to inspire others to say that if I
Yeah.
can do it, you can do it. Yeah. So I sold that firm for $162 million. And that's not the interesting part of the conversation. The interesting part of the conversation is that I own the business. I didn't have any outside investors. I didn't have any debt. I didn't have to roll any equity, and I didn't have to do an earnout. I got all my money up front, and that was unique. And after I did that, which led to the book, which ultimately led me to you in building Collective 54, is people were like, well, how do I do that? Most services businesses, that's a hard thing to do. And I thought there were a lot of entrepreneurs out there that were trying to do that. And if I could share with them what I learned, that it would be helpful. These days, Nick, as you now know, we've had 57 firms in Collective 54 do the same thing, exit their
Yeah.
firms. And it seems like, we're doing, a couple a month now. So I'm very proud of that. I judge myself now not on my personal success, but on the success I help other people make and get. And that's very rewarding. So we're hoping someday that's well into the hundreds.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by One Accord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, welcome, Greg Alexander, to the Value Factory. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to just talk for a quick second on how I came to know you. And really, it starts with your book here, The Boutique, but then ask you to tell, a couple minutes of your story. The short version is a friend of mine, Craig Dickens, chairman at Merit Investment Bank, told me, Nick, you got to read this book. And actually, the author of the book has a community set up. And you should look into it. So I took it on spring break. I think I read your whole book in 4 days, right? On spring break on the beach in Cancun. It was great. And I came back and I filled out a form, and I got Zach on the line, and I was a member shortly thereafter. So I think it's been a couple of years that I've been in Collective 54. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the Value Factory today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I had forgotten that Craig connected you and I haven't spoken to him in a while, but if you see him, tell him I said hello. And Nick, it's great to have you in the community, and I'm appreciative of being on your show today.
Thank you. So here's the fun thing, the funny thing, as it were. The work that you do in Collective 54 is so similar to the work that we do at One Accord, and it's all focused around grow, scale, exit, helping owners achieve kind of that exit that is so highly coveted. Now, you do it, I would say, and I say firsthand, better than anybody else for ProServe owners like myself. And one of the reasons that you do it so well is because you've done it before. This is the boutique is really your story. So
Yep.
Let me ask this: when you started, and it was SBI, right? Sales Benchmark International. When you started SBI, did you start it with an exit in mind?
I did not. I was a first-time founder, first-time entrepreneur, and I was coming out of corporate America, which I had spent many years in. And my motivation for starting my own firm was I was seeking freedom. I worked for a large Fortune 500 company, which was called EMC. They're now part of Dell Computer. And my wife and I had moved 4 times in 11 years. And the way you move up in a company like that, this was pre-COVID, think back to those days where there was no such thing as virtual work. You moved around. And we were getting tired of moving around. My wife is a 7th generation Texan. At the time, we were living in Atlanta, Georgia. She wanted to get home. There really wasn't an opportunity for me to transfer within that company to get back home. So that was the reason why I started the company, for freedom. And then along the way, what happens, and I think this is representative of most founders, is you go from seeking freedom and then you get that. And then your ambition expands. And then you want freedom and you want wealth and you want power and you want fame. The human nature kicks in. And as your
Yeah.
ambitions expand, you decide to do more and more things. And ultimately, what that leads to is the desire to exit because you want generational wealth and complete freedom, not just time freedom or money freedom, but both. So that's what happened with me.
And how long from start to finish was was the SBI season in life?
Yeah, it was 10 years and 7 months. I started in January of 2006 and sold in August of 2017.
And I think you've been, fairly open about that exit. We'll just say it was a big exit. You did well.
Yeah, so I throw the number around. Sometimes people accuse me of being arrogant and taking a victory lap. That's not the reason why I throw the number around. I throw it around to inspire others to say that if I
Yeah.
can do it, you can do it. Yeah, so I sold that firm for $162 million. And that's not the interesting part of the conversation. The interesting part of the conversation is that I owned the business. I didn't have any outside investors. I didn't have any debt. I didn't have to roll any equity, and I didn't have to do an earnout. I got all my money up front, and that was unique. And after I did that, which led to the book, which ultimately led me to you in building Collective 54, is people were like, well, how do I do that? Most services businesses, that's a hard thing to do. And I thought there were a lot of entrepreneurs out there that were trying to do that. And if I could share with them what I learned, that it would be helpful. These days, Nick, as you now know, we've had 57 firms in Collective 54 do the same thing, exit their firms. And it seems like, we're doing, a couple a month now. So I'm very proud of that. I judge myself now not on my personal success, but on the success I help other people make and get. And that's very rewarding. So we're hoping someday that's well into the hundreds.
Well, and someday I look forward to counting myself amongst those hundreds.
Yeah, me too.
Really, the work that you and the team, Jeff and Matt and Zach, it just, you guys are world changing, life changing. I'll I could talk for a while on that, but I want to share something. And this, I didn't prep you for this one. I went to a retreat that you and the team hosted. And I watched you in action. I watched you coaching real time your team. And I was super impressed. And I don't even know if you walk around with like an awareness of this. I believe that you do, but you're a coach. Like that's in you. Where did that come from? And I can give you the example is, I think it was Jeff that was presenting, and you just kind of stepped in and you observed the audience and you observed where he was at, and it was a small group, and you just kind of brought it together and you just said, hey, this is where we need to go with this right in that moment.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I'm not sure. I've been told that before. I think it's more of a function of the role I play now than it is a skill I possess or a personality trait. So I'm the owner of Collective 54. I'm not the operator of it. And my members, what you would call clients, are also owners. So I know how they think. And when my team, which are operators, and they're supposed to be, and when they're delivering for members, they're thinking like operators, not like owners, because they're not. They're operators, right? So I can jump in and say, hey, I understand Jeff, Matt, Zach, Julie, whoever, what it is that you just said, but to the audience who are owners, this is what that means to you in the context of being an owner. So it's more of a function of the role that I play at Collective 54 than anything else, I think.
Okay, so you just touched on something that I'm going to go 2 layers into. There's in my history, I've heard lots of people say, well, I just wish employees would act like owners.
Yeah.
And then, what I've heard said in response to that is, well, bullshit, make them owners then. Because, right, if you want them to act like an owner, they don't have the same incentive. But then I've heard others smartly, and as you just did, frame the ideal is that they act as operators. And you just said they should. What's
Yep.
the difference there between an owner and an operator?
Well, if everybody's an owner, then you have overlapping responsibilities, and therefore you reach the point of diminishing returns.
Hmm.
If everybody's an operator, same thing, overlapping responsibilities, the point of diminishing returns. So you have to ask yourself the question, if I properly define lanes and if I'm contributing to the firm as an owner would, and let's say Jeff, our president, is contributing as an operator, then that's a powerful combination. 1 + 1 = 5 in that scenario. If he was an owner and I was an owner, maybe 1 + 1 = 1.5, or vice versa if we were both operators. So everybody has to bring their own, unique perspective to it. Now, I will tell you that all of my employees do have an ownership interest in the company, but I'm doing that not to have them think like owners. I actually don't want them to. I
Hmm.
want them to think like operators because they have to deliver day to day for the clients, and I want them to be thinking about that. But they have ownership interest because I want to make them wealthy, someday when they decide that they want to sell Collective 54. It's not a behavioral thing. I don't give them equity because I want them to change their behavior. I give them equity because I want to reward them for their hard work. Different mindset.
Yeah. Yep. And one I think we align on, you and
Yep.
I. Um, Thinking about that grow, scale, exit framework, um, think if you can think outside of the ProServe space. Um,
Yeah.
what do you imagine are some lessons that you've learned within Collective 54 and your own experience at SBI that might apply to firms in manufacturing or in the trades, for example, that are not specific to ProServe firms?
Yeah. So I think there are some similarities there. So what Nick is referring to is a life cycle framework that we use at Collective 54. We say it takes 15 years to go from cradle to grave as a ProServe firm, 3 stages, grow, scale, exit, approximately 5 years in each stage. I think the transferable lesson is that it's a different playbook at each
Mm.
stage. So, for example, what you're worried about in grow is survivability. I started this firm. I have a small team. I have a small number of clients. I'm probably capital constrained. I don't have a big brand name. I don't have referral sources built out just yet. And I'm just trying to make a go of it. I'm trying to figure out who my ideal client is, what my service is going to be, how I might price things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a period, it's a super fun period. I love it because it's a period of experimentation. Yeah.
But sometimes it can really put the FU in fun. When you say it's
Yeah.
a fun period, it is hard, man.
Yeah. But that's what makes it fun. At
Okay.
least for me, anything that's easy isn't as much fun.
All right. All right.
So that's the growth period. Then you get out of that period right around year 5 or real 6, and you're no longer worried about surviving. You're now worried about, well, how do I scale this thing? And you realize that the brute force approach to things doesn't work because
Yeah.
you've gotten to a size. Like, let's say you grow with 30%. If you ask a founder of a business in the scale stage if he's going to grow 30%, he says yes. And you follow up with by saying, can you absorb personally 30% more work? And he or she says, well, no, I can't. Well, how come? Well, I'm already working 70 hours a week. I'm
Yep.
like, all right, well, then you've got to scale. It's no longer about doing more. It's about doing things differently so that you can scale, which doesn't require you to absorb all the work. So that's what happened in the scale stage. As you might imagine, you start developing processes, methodologies, you build out a team, you install technology, you kind of get a little bit more sophisticated. The mistake to avoid there is run the grow playbook when you're in scale.
Hmm.
And then the mistake is to run the scale playbook when you're in grow. Like you almost have to treat them as two different companies. And very
Yeah.
often, it's a different team. There's certain types of people that work good in the growth stage and certain types of people that work in the scale stage, and it's often not the case. And then exit, same thing. It's an entirely different strategy then. Then you're thinking about selling the firm. So now you have to think like a buyer. And you have to say, well, why would somebody want to buy my firm? And you got to prove that you have durable profits, that, you don't have a lot of risk in the business, that somebody, if they bought their firm, they could actually grow it and it could be a good investment for them. It's a different set of objectives in that stage. And it's an entirely different playbook. So where I think it is transferable to manufacturing and distribution and things like that, the industries that you're focused in, is just, I don't know if it's 15 years in those industries. It is in ProServe. I don't know if it's 3 stages or 2 stages or 5 stages. The point I'm trying to make is, you run a different playbook at different evolutionary
Yeah.
states.
It is. Those 3 stages apply. 15 years might be short, might be long, depending on the specific industry. And I think in ProServe, you're even observing that 15-year cycle is shortening with technology.
Big time. Yeah. I used to brag about getting my exit done in 11 years. That was 4 years ahead of schedule, 10.7 years. And these days, that's long. These services firms are growing so rapidly. And the historical constraint in services has always been headcount.
Yeah.
So that's now going away because you can do a lot of work with the machine now. And because that obstacle is being removed, scale is happening much faster.
Yeah. I had a podcast interview with Sel Watts, another Collective 54 member. We talked about, actually, she shared with me, some organizations on their org chart have their digital agents like built in.
We have
Team.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have a partner called the AI founder.
Yeah.
And it's my co-pilot. And I do my job every day in conjunction with that. And all my team members also have their co-pilots. And in fact, some of them have more co-pilots. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned Matt. Matt has a prospecting pilot. He's
Yeah.
got a sales co-pilot, like, and on it goes. I think at last count, we had like 37 agents running.
Hey, everybody. Nick Anderson, CEO of One Accord. Thank you for listening in to today's episode of The Value Factory. I hope that you're getting value from this episode. Now, listen, one of the primary ways that we support CEOs at One Accord is using Oasis, the One Accord system. It's our proprietary business operating system that's designed to shift your leadership team from reactive firefighting to focused execution. We provide the framework that will align your vision with your strategy, ensuring sustainable growth and clarity at every level of your organization. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or our bio and get connected with one of our senior leaders. And now back to the show. Yeah, and the idea of, an individual being promoted to then, have a team under them,
Yep.
well, that team just becomes these agents. I'll tell you what, though, there's a myth right now that agents, they never call in sick. They always show up on time. They work 24/7. That isn't true just yet. They're still temperamental, man.
They are. I mean, what we think the current state is, this is March of 2026, is that AI can do about 80% of the work. Humans are doing about 20% of the work. So we call it the 80-20 model. The thing is that the 20% is that much more valuable now.
Right.
Like those aren't equally weighted. The contribution that the human makes is just so much greater now because all the, crap they used to have to do in their job, for lack of a better term, they don't have to do anymore. The AI is doing it for them now.
Yeah. I spent a considerable amount of time building an agent that can build PowerPoints. So I probably put 2 or 3x the number of hours into building the agent as I would one PowerPoint. But then going forward,
yeah,
I mean, I like a beautiful PowerPoint. So I like to put time into it, Yep. These were projects that the ROI was so low, other than my own, I just like it to look nice. Right.
Yeah, but now that agent can build them for you forever, right?
You can build infinite amount.
Exactly.
Forever. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, okay. So the area that I would think that you are the most expert in, and I think this because I've seen it real time, and you built a $162 million company on it, is sales.
Yep.
You are, if ever there was an expert in sales, Greg Alexander is one of, if not, the. So how are you approaching sales in this current era? You just time-stamped our conversation right now. It's March of 2026.
Yeah.
You sold a company that was Sales Benchmark International.
Yeah.
You know where we've come from and you can see where we're going. Where are we going in sales?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I would point you to that make this era in our professional careers unique. So first off, is most sales is done virtually now. And as a result of that, every sales conversation is recorded, video, audio, and text transcription. So for the first time, we can quality control every sales call because we have access to what the prospect actually said. And when I grew up in sales, we were still doing belly to belly sales. Like we got in the car and drove over to the prospect. And you weren't going to whip out a tape recorder and put it on the table and record the call. That would have been very awkward, right? So everything is recorded now. So if you have a sales system, ours is called the Opportunity Standard, and you hardwire that into a technology tool, like we happen to use ZRA, Zoom Revenue Accelerator. And if every sales call is now run up against your sales methodology, you can know exactly where you are in every sales campaign, not based on the opinion of the salespeople, which tend to be opportunistic and grade inflators, but you can hear it directly from the customer. In the market research world, they call it voice of the customer. And it used to be episodic, like you'd run a focus group or something like that.
Yeah.
Now it's continual every time. And then the AI can string together the conversation. So, in most complex B2B sales, the sales campaign could be 10, 15, 20 conversations over the course of 3, 6, 9 months or whatever it is. And when the AI is assisting you by keeping track of all that, the quality of the sales call goes up tremendously. When I say the quality of the sales call, I don't mean from the salesperson's perspective.
Right.
I mean from the prospect's perspective. And they start engaging with the salesperson as a thought leader, as a thought partner, a problem solver. Close rates go up, sales cycles shorten, average deal size go up. So that's a big, big, big change driven by technology. The second big change that I would tell you is that with modern AI tools, like we happen to use Clay, the ability to hyper segment and hyper personalize has never been greater. So hyper segment is, and I'll just use Collective 54 as an example. Obviously we're focused on a single industry, professional services. That's the reason why the number 54 is in the name. That's the industry code. We're focused on a specific segment, which we call the boutique, which is post-startup but pre-exit. We're focused on an individual, which is the CEO, owner type person. And we're focused on a geography, North America. So I now can screen against the database against those criteria. And then I can double click on that and get to hyper segmentation, because the demographic profile I just gave you was segmentation. Hyper segmentation is, okay, so which firms are growing rapidly? Because we're focusing on helping firms solve scalability problems. Well, if you're not growing, you don't have scalability problems.
Mm-hmm.
So just because there's a $25 million consulting company in Chicago doesn't mean they're a good fit for me. They could be a $25 million company for 20 years. Like, they're happy doing what they're doing. There's no, compelling event to change. We can cut it all the way down to growth segments. For example, one of our growth segments right now is gene editing, believe it or not. So consulting companies that help healthcare institutions understand gene editing. Now, how do we find that? Well, we're running an agent that's doing hypersegmentation, and we noticed that consulting companies that are in healthcare doing gene editing are growing at twice the rate. So now we're reaching out to them and they're responding to our message. So that's hypersegmentation. The other part of this is hyperpersonalization. We're not just reaching out with, hi, I'm Greg, and I help founders of pro-serve firms do XYZ. Are you interested in Collective 54? That's like a generic message that everybody's hitting delete on. But our agent now can listen to every podcast a prospect has ever recorded, can read every social media post or article they've ever written, screens their LinkedIn profile for their entire career history, is monitoring every possible data feed that you can get. So when we reach out, it sounds like, hey, Nick, I'm Greg Alexander. I understand that you're the CEO of One Accord. You've been there for 2 years after a 25-year successful career in banking. I understand that you serve manufacturers and distributors. Your business is growing right now, and you install executive teams to help them grow scale. You can see what I mean? It's just so much more relevant that the response rate goes up. So these tools, these technology tools are changing selling forever. And I do think it's different this time. I've been around long enough. I started my sales career in 1993. This was before the internet.
Yeah.
And every time there was a technology wave, whether it was the internet, whether it was mobile computing, whether it was a cloud, whether it was SaaS, whether it was email, everybody, would say, well, this is going to change the game. And it did to a degree until we screwed it up, right? Like, I mean, we
Yeah.
used to be able to show up on the first page of Google, and now you can't because
Yes.
unless you have a huge advertising budget, you're not getting on the first page. So those technologies had its moment, but then everybody rushed into it, and then the moment went away. I think this technology, because it's intelligence, not automation, its moment is going to be much longer, and
Hmm.
it's leveling the playing field quite a bit.
Well, that's true. Leveling the playing field. I have access to tools that
Yeah,
historically only Fortune 1000, Fortune 5, Fortune 100 companies.
exactly.
If, if I if I was so inclined, I could code myself a CRM system, a software,
Correct.
if I were inclined. Um,
Yep.
that's not what I'm going to choose to do with my nights and weekends because that's what it would
Right.
take right now.
And just 3 or 4 years ago, if you wanted to build your own CRM, it was cost prohibitive. You'd have to hire a
Yeah.
development company and spend $1 million. Now you can
Yep.
do it over a weekend if you wanted to, right? So it's
That's
so
right.
different now.
Yeah. Hello again. It's Nick Anderson. Thank you for tuning in to the Value Factory. I hope that you're getting value from this episode. Now, listen, if your organization is facing a leadership gap, One Accord provides fractional and interim C-suite executives. Now, these are men and women who deliver immediate clarity and measurable results. Our seasoned leaders integrate quickly into your team to drive strategic initiatives and maintain momentum without the long-term overhead of a full-time hire. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or the bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. Now back to the Value Factory. So I'm hearing you kind of started with the sales conversation and went to the lead gen. So I'm going to go backwards from
Okay.
the way you said. So you've got agents, you're using technology to discover leads that have a high probability of qualification.
Yep.
And not just the basic BANT, but
Right.
hyper personalized qualification because they're in an industry such as gene sequencing, and
Yeah.
that particular industry is experiencing more growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're able to learn more about that person, me as the founder CEO, which looks a lot like a relational selling approach.
Yeah.
But you know me because I've chosen to put myself out on podcasts and interviews and blog posts and LinkedIn, and I've made that choice voluntarily to share that part of my life. And so you're just approaching me as someone who knows me,
Correct.
got deep industry expertise. Your outreach and follow-up though, in that, is it, are you doing things differently in like email, cold calls? Are you sending flyers and postcards? How are you meeting these folks?
Yeah. So we use a multi-channel approach. The most successful channel is referrals. So if we discover a firm that's growing rapidly and we determine that they might be having scalability challenges as a result of that, we come up with a very targeted message. But instead of approaching that person directly, we try to figure out who do we know that knows that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have found that if we get a warm introduction, so instead of delivering that message directly, like let's say, Nick, you knew somebody that I wanted to know. I would call you and I'd say, Nick, I want to know Mary Sue. The reason why I want to know Mary Sue is here's how I think I can help her because I think she's having these problems. And then you pick up the phone and call Mary Sue and say, Mary Sue, I think I want to introduce you to Greg and here's why. So that hyper-personalized message is being delivered by a warm person. So that's the first channel. Now, it's not always the case where we can network our way in there. So then we'll engage with them directly, but it's a very different type of engagement. Before we reach out to them, we will follow them. We follow them on everything that they do. And these days, most everybody is engaged in different platforms in different ways. And as we start following them, we start engaging them where they are. So let's say, just as a simple example, somebody posted on LinkedIn. We might comment on their post. And I don't mean one of these, fake, inauthentic, like Like, oh, that's a great article. Thanks for sharing. Like we engage, like, hey, I read your article. I found it interesting. I have a follow-up question. Would you mind answering it? And then you get into a dialogue. And when that happens, they end up clicking on your profile and saying, who is this person?
Yep.
And they learn about Collective 54 and they might make their way to the website and so on. And then you go that route. And then, I could give you several other examples of how we go about it. But this is what is unique about what it is that we do that your audience should pay attention to, because this may or may not apply to them, is that we're not a volume-based business. We're trying to be the best, not the biggest. And because we're a community, every time we add a member to the community, they need to be a positive influence on the community.
Yeah.
And so we're very, very careful that we're bringing people in that can add to the collective body of knowledge. So it's very different. Now, if I was a large public company and I had to hit this quarterly's earning forecast and I was willing to sell anybody that could fog a mirror, right, that would be an entirely different
Quite a
story, right?
different
But
game. Yeah.
yeah, altogether. Yeah.
That I appreciate.
Mm.
I would say if we were to bring on 20 new clients this year, that would be phenomenal. And that would be about the extent
Right.
that and so here again, it's not a volume game. It's not about being the biggest, but that would significantly increase the size of our firm. So we can focus on, so there's an element of qualification. So now along this journey, you use the opportunity standard,
Yep.
and that brilliant has informed how we look at our pipeline now.
Yep.
And we've developed our kind of own, internal framework. We made it our own, but it's really at the core of it is the opportunity standard. Along the way, there are qualifications built into your opportunity standard that are not just those BANT, the BANT, budget, authority, need, and timing, but those qualifications look more like alignment and urgency. And so you're using that transcription technology, recording the calls to listen to the actual voice of the prospect, giving you signals or giving your team signals. That is phenomenal.
Yeah. I'll give your audience a tangible example of that. That has been particularly helpful for us. So our agent is monitoring the CC line on emails. Because what we've learned is that who we serve, boutique pro serve firms, it's usually set up as a private partnership, 2 or 3 co-founders. We might be in dialogue with one person, but small partnerships make decisions by committee, because to join Collective 54, you got to spend some money. And there's usually a partnership agreement that says, okay, if we're going to spend money, the partners have to vote on it. But sometimes we don't know who the partners are. But our agent is screening the emails and they're looking for who's on the CC line. And very often we're discovering who the other decision makers are. So then once we identify who those people are, the next time we're on the phone with our primary contact, we might say, hey, I noticed that Joe and Eric were on the CC line. It looks like they're your co-founders. Is that true? Yes, it is. It's probably a situation where this decision has to get made collectively as partners. I mean, you are partners after all. Is that true? Yes. What can I do for you to help you educate Joe and Eric? And then you're on the phone with them. It wasn't too long ago, but we weren't doing that.
Yeah.
And we were assuming there was a single decision maker, and there wasn't. And then deals would get long. The pipeline, some of these deals needed a birthday cake. They've been around that long. And we're like, what's going on? So again, another example of what the tech can do. The human could do that as well. But, if you're having dozens of conversations, I mean, how do you keep track of all that? It's virtually impossible. I know.
You just can't. I mean, even Matt at the retreat, we were reviewing some of his call transcripts real time, which I appreciate so much. You do this for the Collective 54 members. You just, you draw back the curtain and you say, this is how we're doing it.
Yep.
And it's so helpful. And Matt was like, I don't even remember that from the conversation.
Yeah. How can you? Right. Yeah.
There's so many conversations. It's too much going on to rely on just the human memory for that. Following your example, following your lead, have a half a dozen or so call transcripts now that we've used. And I've got an early adopter who said, I really want to get better. So yes, you can share my call transcript and we'll use that as a learning opportunity. Not everybody wants to go first and be vulnerable that way. And even just talking through the call transcript, we uncovered things that I would have asked him. So tell me about your sales call. Oh, it was great. Yeah. We're going to give him an SOW next week. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move that up. We'll put it at 90% probability, right?
Yeah.
I review the call transcript and I'm like, they're so misaligned.
Yeah.
Like they want to buy an orange and we sell apples. Like, yes, they are eager to buy oranges, man. We don't sell those.
Yeah.
And that came out in this call transcript. And so I don't know that we are going to be closing more deals right away. I think what we're going to be doing is getting sharper in our focus, and we're going to have more qualified people in our pipeline and eventually be wasting less time. And out of respect for the people that we're talking to, not wasting their time.
Yeah. What I think will end up happening with you is you actually will end up closing more deals, but for the reason that you just said. You're going to know, I mean, you're selling oranges, so you're not going to talk to people that want to buy bananas, right?
Yep.
And you'll know that. So you won't be wasting time with people that don't fit that criteria. And then the other thing that happens is in services firms, which One Accord is, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that services are bought, they're not sold.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can go test drive the thing or try on the pair of jeans or, I don't know, you're throwing a wedding for your daughter and the chef gives you a sample of the cake or the entree, whatever. You don't get that chance in services. So facilitating the purchase as opposed to trying to sell somebody something is a better way to go. And that by doing that, you take friction out. And I guess the tangential benefit of that is a shorter sales cycle and a higher close rate.
Yeah. So good. Greg, I've said it to you, you're making the world a better place. And I mean that sincerely. And I can say it firsthand. The time that I've had to spend with you in the community, with the whole team, with Julie and Jeff and Zach and Matt and yourself, I'm better for it. One Accord is better for it. And I think I should thank Craig Dickens for recommending the boutique. And Craig and I actually work pretty closely together. He's one of the early adopters in my vision for One Accord. And that is, he's an investment banker.
Yeah.
And he gets, I don't know how many calls a week, but let's just say it's 10 calls a week. And I always refer to our clients as Bob for anonymity. So Bob calls Craig. Hey, Craig, it's Bob. I want you to sell my business. And Craig says, Bob, tell me about it. He learns a little bit. Bob, you're not quite ready, right?
Yeah.
It's grow, scale, exit. You're not ready for exit. And so my hope for One Accord is that we become kind of that outsourced consulting partner to all the investment bank firms in the US, that instead of turning somebody away or keeping them on a short leash, that they refer those clients to us and we get them ready and turn them back. And Craig has been a great partner for us in that. We've had several successful transactions, where he started with them. We worked with him, gave him back, and he was able to transact for him.
Yeah. I can see how what you do, that's a good use case for you. And what's great with that is everybody wins. I mean, the client wins because they get to an exit. Craig wins because he sells that company's business, and you win because you have a client and a success story. So that makes a lot of sense.
It lines up. It lines up. And I'm just here again. I'm so thankful that Craig told me I should read this book. Greg, thanks for coming on The Value Factory. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and experience. And I'd say, as you like to say to everybody that's been listening, thanks for giving us your attention and your time.
Yeah. Hey, it was my pleasure. It's always great to be with you. I wish you much continued success, and we'll talk again, okay?
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Bye-bye.